Good morning and welcome to my hobby table yet again, and yet another episode of Tidbits. And in this version of Tidbits, or this episode of Tidbits, I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So even though it's titled Tidbits, I'm not so sure how short it's going to be. So I'm here on the hobby table again. I'm looking out my window. The wind, it's April 2nd, springtime in Wisconsin. The wind is howling, literally howling. You might actually hear it howling through the partially open window. There's white stuff on the ground. It's 34 or 35 degrees and raining. So it is quite unpleasant to be outside at this time. So that's why I'm making a video on the table. So if you look on the table today, today's episode of Tidbits is titled Futaba, JR, MECOA, and Enya. So I'm going to try to cover all of these things real quickly. So on the table today are a couple of radios. One you've seen before, one you really haven't. So let's start with the one you've seen before. So this is the original Futaba FP T7 FG that I got in I think it was a Facebook marketplace deal. After all these things, I just don't remember exactly where I got it. But anyway, this was a complete system, and this was the old G-style connector, obviously. Obviously, it was very old, so the battery didn't work or anything. And then subsequently to this, I had a customer whose engines I just worked on. He had sent me a box, and I made a video, but I never posted that video. He sent me a box of gold systems. So there's up here in the drawer, up here in the closet, there's a box of, I think there was at least 3 other gold systems. There was a 4-channel, a 5-channel, and I believe there was a 7-channel, all in various states of disrepair. Some were in better shape than others. And I don't even know what to do with those, honestly. None of them were in as good a shape as this particular system was. So I was thinking, in the event that one of these days I will fly again, but for right now, I'm enjoying the hobby in a much different way than most people do, and that is just by getting content and posting them on my channel. So don't judge me for sharing all of these wonderful items with you, because that's just how I'm that's how I'm enjoying the hobby at this time. And I have been doing this for 10 years. The YouTube channel, my channel reached a decade in January. So anyway, back to this. This was the old G-style connectors, the 3 pins that were very problematic for removing and inserting numerous times. So I went out and I found a different receiver for this thing. And I'm not zoomed in real high here. It's a FP R117H AM 7-channel. It's a 7-channel receiver. So what I did was I bought this receiver, and I just pulled the crystal that was in the original AM receiver out, put it in here, and I said, you know what? I'm going to invest in a new battery for this thing, which was about $50, $60. So I've got some money invested in these radio systems I'm about to show you. Some serious money. So I got a new battery, installed it, charged it up. It works fine. And then, of course, the next step is, well, how do you know it works fine? So I had sent, I think my last episode of Tidbits, I mentioned Radio South. Tony at Radio South, he checks out radios, does repairs, and then, of course, he tunes them if necessary and all that good stuff. So I sent this and this other radio to Tony at Radio South to have him test them, verify that they are in good operational shape, and I'll get to the other radio here shortly, but I want to tell you the story about Radio South first. First of all, I think Tony is incredibly overworked. I think that's the impression I get, that he's really overworked, because I sent these 2 systems off to him on March 10th. And I knew it was only going to take like 2-3 days to get to him. I waited till the 20th of March, and I never heard anything back from him. Nothing. So I finally sent him an email on the 20th saying, hey, did you get these? What's the status of my radios? He just sent a short thing saying something like, yes, I got them, you're 7th in line. And I'm like, okay. So at that point, I was a little kind of pissed, because it's like, you received my radios, you didn't at least acknowledge that you you got them. You didn't at least let me know that you got them. So one of the things that I like to pride myself on when I'm servicing a customer's engines is communication. I am always, when relevant, in communication with my customers. When they ship it, I acknowledge that they shipped it. When I receive it, I send them an email and say, hey, I received it, and I let them know the status of their engine throughout the process. I didn't hear anything for 10 days. So I was a little upset at that point. So anyway, on the 20th, I think, when was it that it shipped back? He shipped it back on the 27th. Same box, everything. So I get these things, and I'm going to read exactly verbatim from the invoice what it says here. Note to customer, David, I checked over the Futaba and it is working just fine. The receiver works well. I installed the correct connector on the transmitter battery on the JR, and we'll get to the JR in a minute, and replaced the internal memory battery as well. I checked the transmitter and receiver, and all is working well with this one as well. Tony. So and that was just on my invoice. That's the extent of the information I got on these. He just says they work well. So I get them, and I take it out, and I'm looking, and I'm hoping that I'm going to see some sort of a sticker, a label of some sort that says that he did something to these, and I don't see anything. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I've got it on an invoice. He didn't even send it in an email that all is well with these things. He just sent it in on the invoice. So I'm thinking, okay, there's really no way for me to have any kind of other validation should a year or two pass and I forget that this has been verified by Tony. There's nothing, no stickers on here that actually verify that. So now let's get to this particular radio. I'm going to zoom in just a bit more here on this one. So this, and this is all sort of a related, this was the other transmitter and receiver that I sent to Tony. But this is a whole different story. So this is a JR X347 radio system. Now, this was one of those things where I happened to see this, and I've had this for a while. I happened to see this on eBay as a it was an auction, and nobody was, there were no bids on it, and the auction time was coming to a close, and I was like, whatever, let me just bid the minimum bid and see what happens. Well, lo and behold, I won this thing on the minimum bid, not really expecting to win it because there are people watching it. And usually if you got people watching it and there's no bids, it's going to be one of those things where people are going to start slamming bids all over the place in the last minute of the auction. Well, that didn't happen. So I have this complete system. So I don't have the box here because it's a big, huge box. And it came with like 3 different partitions and all that stuff. So anyway, I've got this system, but it was in such, it looks pristine, but the battery connectors were just completely corroded. The batteries were leaking crap, and it was the worst set of batteries that I've seen in an old system like that, because this Futaba system the NiCads weren't like that at all, but in this one, and I actually took this radio apart and attempted, in my feeble non-soldering technique ways, tried to, because I bought new batteries, I bought receiver batteries, I bought transmitter batteries, 2-pack of each, and I was going to put the receiver or the transmitter battery in here and reuse the connector, but the connectors, even on the one on the board, was just in such horrible shape that I wasn't comfortable either repairing it, removing it, replacing it. So I was like, you know what, the heck with it, I'm sending this Futaba out, I'm going to send this transmitter out too. Now, this is what the receiver looks like, and it's still all coiled up. I hope you can see this. It's still all coiled up like it came from the factory. So I'm not even sure that this thing has ever been used, honestly, because this is the original receiver that was in the box. So I'm not sure that, and who is going to wrap their antenna back up like that? I certainly wouldn't. So I'm not even sure if this could be a brand new system. Of course, it's in better shape now because it's got brand new batteries in it. It turns on and it does all its good stuff. Now, the only drawback to this is this switch here, which is the flap mode landing switch, is broken off. Now, that might be kind of my fault. Maybe it wasn't broken when I packaged this and put it in to send it to Radio South. It wasn't broken then. It was fully functional, and it's one of these long switches. It was a big long one. So I had put these both in a large priority mailbox, and it was a tight fit. But you know, it wasn't broken when I got it. When I got this back from Radio South, this was broken off. So that was just yet another thing. I'm like, what the? And in all honesty, that's just as much my fault because I didn't have a larger box to more comfortably pack them. But they both fit in there pretty well. But again, this is one of those things where this one has a sticker on it, but this sticker is an old sticker. It's dated 10/30 Halloween of 1994. And I'm not sure, this is probably from the manufacturer. But the reason I really kind of went after this one is because these X347s, I remember seeing these in RC Modeler magazine, and I was like, at that time, I was all oohing and ahhing over these things, but I was either unable or unwilling to pay the price for one of these then, because this was really an expensive radio at that time. And from my research, I found that these things were only offered from 1990 to 1994. So this looks like it's got a 94 label on there, probably in one of the last years. But this thing came with a book. I mean, a really huge book, which is super cool because I would prefer to refer to a paper manual when I'm doing things, something in paper, because it's not always easy to have a computer available when you're trying to do certain things. But this book is just amazing. It's a huge book, and it's very well written. It's very clear. So, I mean, this is cool. I really like this. So, I like this radio a lot. So, that's the bottom line. And again, no stickers from Tony. So, right now, I'm kind of on the fence with the Tony Radio South thing. The last radio I want to talk about, JR related also, is this guy. Now, if you remember I made a video on this, several actually. This is the XP8103 transmitter system. And when I got these, I got several other transmitters in a Facebook Marketplace deal, but I was really after the OS 120 Surpass engine. I didn't care about these transmitters, so I pretty much was giving them away at that time. And I had people clamoring, and right away I was like, you know what, this one I might hang on to, and then I changed my mind and said I'm not going to. But I had people climbing the walls wanting this because I was basically giving it away for free. Well, when I decided I was going to hang on to it, I went out, and this is all in another video, and you can go and look that up too. This is called A Second Chance. XP8103, A Second Chance. I went out and I bought a receiver and the proper crystal for this, and I happen to have three look like really nice JR servos here, and I was offering this thing for like $75, this whole little package here, and I got crickets, which I was thinking, well, it's funny because everybody that cheap that they want something for free, but then they won't, you know, invest a little bit of money, because if this is all that it's supposed to be, the greatest transmitter of all time, then I didn't think that the $75, me just trying to recoup my investment here with a receiver and stuff, I didn't think it was all that unreasonable. So I'm going to say that $65 if you guys want this, and that includes shipping, because it's going to take $18 probably to ship this. So if you want this, $18 or $65 shipped, what you see here. I think this receiver is in really good shape too. It's the exact same receiver that came with this. It's a 9-channel NER 549X PPM receiver. So anyway, that's it for that. But I just thought it was humorous that, you know, everybody wanted something when it was basically free, and then if there was a slight amount of money invested in it, then all of a sudden nobody's interested, which, whatever. So, as the title of the video states, JR, or Futaba JR MECOA. So, on the MECOA front, I have that OS FP that had the MECOA diesel head on it. Well, this was pretty rough shape, and I had somebody say, hey, look, your contra piston is stuck, pop it out. So I did. I've got it 90% of the way out here, and you can see, hopefully you can see, that I've removed the O-ring from it. And the reason I did that was because I went to MECOA's site, because that's where they were selling these. I don't think they're still selling them. I think it says sold out. I don't know if they're making them anymore. But I went and they have replacement O-rings for the contra piston. So I invested a minimal amount of money and got, oh, here they are. It comes in a pack of 3. Replacement O-rings for these things. But the other thing that I thought was interesting is you get this nice little flyer that comes with it, and it says here, MECOA owns the rights to all of these engines. And I'll hold that up there so you can see it. MECOA owns the rights to all of those engines. So whatever, they must have gone out and just searched the world for all these parts and everything, bought the rights to all those engines, and they had limited parts. So this is kind of one of those cool little flyer things. And then on the other side here is all the stuff that MECOA actually still makes. I guess they still make some of these engines. So anyway, that was interesting. So I don't know if anybody's actually replaced an O-ring before, but the MECOA site's like, these are extremely tight, very tight. Oil it up and push it back in. So at some point I'm gonna take one of these out, lube it up, put it in there, and attempt to somehow press this contra piston back into place gently enough such that it doesn't shear off the edge of that, because that was another thing that MECOA's instructions said. They're like, look, you can do this, but you got to be extremely careful. It's really tight. And it's like, okay, well, you lube it. Well, how do you do it so that you're not, how do you do it? How do you do it so that you're not going to shear that off? Am I going to put a piece of wood on here, just lightly tap on it and tap it in place? I don't know. I don't want to put it in a vise, so I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to do that, but that's what I'm going to attempt to do. And the other thing about this is I went out and I found ether. This is John Deere 80% ether premium starting fluid. Now, when I made my own diesel fuel years ago, I used Johnson's, I think it was Johnson's starter fluid, and it's in that video I made 2 years ago. But anyway, I think at that point that Johnson starter fluid was only like 50 or 60% ether. And I went to look for it and I couldn't find it. And then somebody, a viewer, turned me onto this. They said, hey, look, John Deere, look for the John Deere starter fluid. So I looked it up, and I believe I bought this off of either, I think it was Amazon. It wasn't cheap. It was like $14 for this, but it's 80% ether, so whatever. So what this means is there's a chance that I might actually run compression ignition engines in the future. I've already got one in the closet that was given to me that could be ready to go. It doesn't require anything like this to get it going. But the other real issue with running compression ignition engines is you can't use an electric starter on them, so it's one of these flip things. And those of you that have been with my channel for many years will know that I did have some back issues as a result of some of those many years of flipping engines. So anyway, that's pretty much the episode. Now, the title said Futaba, JR, MECOA, Enya. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with a little clip. So yesterday, the weather is nice. I went out there, not yesterday, but a few days ago, when I was running a customer's engine, the Enya R120 four-cycle. I noticed that I don't really have any FAI fuel mixed up. I didn't have any fuel. I use my FAI 80/20 fuel as the basis for a lot of fuels. Now I do have like a gallon of Omega 15%, but I don't ever run 15% fuel, so I use that to cut it with my FAI to make either 5 or 10% or whatever. So I didn't have any pre-made fuel, and I have some Cool Power 10%. The green stuff, I don't mix that with anything. I just use that straight, but that's getting kind of low. So I was like, crap, I need to make some fuel. So I have a pail of methanol that's been opened, and I opened it a couple of years ago when I first got here. I bought it. But it's one of those things, it's sealed, you know, it got that nice seal, but it's been in the garage. And I pulled it out and I sniffed it, and I'm like, well, I don't know, I guess it smells okay. Maybe it smells okay. It's hard to tell. And then I tasted it, and it's like, I don't know what methanol is supposed to taste like. I just went, okay, I can't tell. So I don't know. I didn't know if it was any good or not. So I just mixed up a gallon anyway and put some in one of my little fuel tanks and took that new Enya 120 4-cycle engine that I put a shorts video on the other day. That video was not FAI fuel, but the short clip that I'm going to put on here now is a run with FAI fuel. Now, it wasn't another tuning run. I wasn't tuning it. It was in the garage. I was just running the engine. I just set the needle valve. I wasn't screwing with anything. I just set it and let it run, because now, after I've spoken yet again to the seller of that, he doesn't know that he ever ran that engine when he bought it for his father. So that could be a very brand new engine. So I was just like, I'm just going to let it run with it. I want it first. I'm testing the FAI, the methanol. Is it viable? Is it still good? And it is, because the engine ran. So the engine is running. It's pretty blubbery, but hey, it's a run and it's a break-in run. So that's the clip you're going to see, and that's what I'm going to leave you with right now. So thank you all for watching.